Welcome, and thank you for joining us. During this concert, we'll delve into music and politics in Germany and America between the end of World War I and the Blitzkrieg bombing of Britain in 1940 and 41. The song you just heard illustrates the rage the Allies felt toward Germany at the end of World War I. Their vengeance was written into the Treaty of Versailles, as it required Germany and her allies to accept responsibility for causing all the loss and damage of the war. The treaty forced Germany to disarm, make substantial territorial concessions, and pay reparations to certain countries. In 1921, the total cost associated with the treaty was assessed at 132 billion marks. That's roughly equivalent to 442 billion modern American dollars. As Germany was struggling with the demands of the Treaty of Versailles, the Cabaret Movement was coming to life. At the turn of the 20th century, all forms of public social criticism were still banned in the German Empire. This censorship was lifted at the end of World War I, allowing artists to write, compose, and perform pieces on social themes that would have been unthinkable just years earlier. The cabaret was home to the most daring and searing social criticism of the time. In our next group, we'll hear a song expressing the joy of living in modern Berlin and an early anthem of the gay rights movement written way back in 1921.
Damit man sehen kann, ob was da ist. Komm, mach mal Licht und rede nun mal nicht. Komm, mach mal Licht, dann wollen wir doch auch mal sehen, ob das eine Sache ist, Berlin im Licht. Komm, mach mal Licht, damit man sehen kann, ob was da ist. Komm, mach mal Licht und rede nun mal nicht. Komm, mach mal Licht, dann wollen wir doch auch mal sehen, ob das eine Sache ist, Berlin im Licht. What makes them think they have the right to say what God considers vice? What makes them think they have the right to keep us out of paradise? They make our lives hell here on earth, poisoning us with guilt and shame. If we resist, prison awaits. So our love dare not speak its name. The crime is when love must hide. From now on we'll love with pride. We're not afraid to be queer and different. If that means hell, then hell will take the chance. They're also straight, uptight and rigid. They march in lockstep, we prefer to dance. We see a world of romance and of pleasure. All they can see is sheer banality. Love in the night are our greatest treasure, where we can be just who we want to be.
In 1913, 31-year-old Franklin Delano Roosevelt was appointed Assistant Secretary of the Navy by President Woodrow Wilson. During his tenure, Roosevelt battled the cabinet's extreme isolationism, arguing during World War I that the U.S. should be building up its naval forces. He went behind the backs of his superiors to prepare the U.S. to enter the war when the inevitable time came. He encouraged the development of a new technology called the submarine, and at the end of the war, single-handedly prevented the government from doing away with the then experimental aviation element of the Navy, later known as the U.S. Air Force. His contemporaries didn't believe it would ever be necessary to have the ability to drop bombs from the air. In 1921, Roosevelt attended a picnic with 2,100 Boy Scouts before departing for Campobello Island in the waters of the Gulf of Maine. Conditions at the scout camp were highly unsanitary, and within days of arriving at Campobello, Roosevelt fell ill. He had contracted polio, and despite his lifelong optimism and struggle to walk, he would never again regain the use of his legs. After serving one term as governor of New York, FDR ran for president on the Democratic ticket against incumbent Herbert Hoover. Roosevelt's progressive platform and desire to be a reformer like his Republican cousin Theodore created a new alliance of voters that included blacks, new immigrants, Jews, and the vast number of blue-collar Americans that participated in the labor unions he helped to create. His unprecedented first 100 days in office saw the passage of a huge number of bills designed to put the 60% of the population that was unemployed back to work, reopen banks in 32 states where they had closed, and creating government financing for agriculture, railroads, and other necessary industries. He created Social Security to pull the 90% of older Americans who were destitute out of poverty, created the Tennessee Valley Authority, the largest government public works project in history, to raise quality of life in rural America while simultaneously giving work to the unemployed, and he ended prohibition, which filled the government coffers with tax revenue while also creating a federally mandated maximum percentage of alcohol in products sold.
We want a man like Roosevelt. We want a man that knows how to pull the country from depression's pit, how to furnish work for men who crave for it. We want a man like Roosevelt, one with proven grit and courage rare. He'll knock out prohibition with repeal, not racing mission when he's seated in the presidential chair. Herbie Hoover promised us 2 chickens in each pot. Breadlines and depression were the only things we got. I lost my job, my bank blew up, and I was on the spot. That's why I'm voting for Roosevelt. Hooray, hooray, he banished all our fear. Hooray, hooray, our banks are in the clear. He brought us back prosperity, he gave us back our beer. That's why I'm voting for Roosevelt.
Austrian Adolf Hitler joined the German army in 1914 and, eager for action, volunteered for dangerous missions. His anti-Semitism, developed in Vienna in his youth, flourished to the point of conspiracy theory while he was in the military. After World War I concluded, Hitler became known as an exciting orator and began speaking to crowds of thousands as a Nazi Party leader. In April of 1921, the victorious European allies of World War I presented Germany with the bill for war reparations. This bill caused immediate and ruinous inflation in Germany as the mark slipped drastically in value. When reparations were announced, $1 US was equivalent to 4 German marks. Over the first half of the 20s, the value of a mark plummeted until by 1923 it took 4 billion German marks to equal $1 US. Germans lost their life savings. Groceries cost billions of marks. Hunger riots broke out. The Nazi Party saw an opportunity, and over the 1920s and early 30s worked to become a mainstream party and elevate Hitler's profile nationally and internationally. In 1933, the German Reichstag was destroyed by fire. The plot was almost certainly carried out by the Nazis, but they blamed the communists and triggered a general election. After a series of complicated negotiations, President Hindenburg was convinced to appoint Hitler Chancellor of Germany. Hitler quickly passed the Enabling Act, which consolidated powers in his cabinet for 4 years, making him a virtual dictator. Hitler then proclaimed that the Nazi Party was the only political party permitted in Germany. German states lost their autonomy, and local officials were replaced by Nazi officials. Hitler withdrew Germany from the League of Nations and tripled the size of the German army, ignoring the arms restrictions imposed by the Treaty of Versailles. The Nazis also started to repress the intellectual criticism of the times. Cabaret in Germany was hit badly. Writers, composers, and performers were imprisoned and sent to concentration camps, committed suicide, or fled into exile. Here are 4 great songs representing the searing power of the Cabaret movement in Germany and the expression of economic and emotional suffering in America.
Papa swindles, Mama swindles, Grandma is a lying thief. We're perfectly shameless, but we're blameless. After all, it's our belief. swindle, yes, it's all a swindle. So get what you can from your fellow man. Girls and boys today would rather steal than blame. They don't care. We tell them, get your share. Life is short and greed's in season. All mankind has lost its reason. Life is good, knock on wood, knock, knock. I saw a film the other day that really varied from the norm. There were no soldiers on parade and no one marched in uniform. Its heroes were not supermen and no one even shot a gun. The audience still loved the film, though not a single war was won. But I was really shocked to see this film was made in Germany. Liar, 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 liar. I'm sick and tired of lies from you, but how I wish your lies were true. Liar, 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 liar. Truth is hard and tough as nails. That's why we need fairy tales. I'm all through with logical conclusions. Why should I deny myself illusions? I saw a court of law where all the justices were just again, where all the lawyers worked for free and all of them were honest men. You could be rich, you could be poor, you could be Christian or a Jew. Your politics did not hold sway, and Don't know why there's no sun up in the sky. Stormy weather since my man and I ain't together. Keeps raining all the time. Life is bare, gloom and misery everywhere. Stormy weather, just can't get my poor self together. I'm weary all the time. I'm weary all the time. Keeps raining all the time.
One of the great legacies of FDR's presidency, like his cousin Theodore, was the conservation movement. He established 140 national wildlife refuges, 29 national forests, and 29 national parks and monuments. Much of this work was accomplished by the Civilian Conservation Corps, FDR's favorite New Deal creation. Over its 12-year history, the Corps enrolled 3.5 million young men who built 13,000 miles of trails, planted 2 billion trees, and upgraded 125,000 miles of roadways. The combination of job creation, conservationism, and enhancement of America's vacation destinations made FDR the most popular president in history.
Just hand me my old Martin, for soon I will be starting back to dear old Charleston far away. Since Roosevelt's been re-elected, we'll not be neglected. We've got Franklin D. Roosevelt back again. Back again, back again. We've got Franklin D. Roosevelt back again. Since Roosevelt's been re-elected, moonshine liquor's been corrected. We've got legal wine, whiskey, beer, and gin. He's the people's choice, he's the nation's voice. For the people all agree, what we need is unity, and we'll march to victory with Mr. Franklin D. He's the people's choice, he's the nation's voice, and our votes will reaffirm we want him for another term.
In 1938, the Austrian chancellor, head of the Austrian Nazi Party, invited the German army to occupy Austria in order to create an alliance with Germany. A few months later, British, French, and Italian leaders signed an agreement giving the Sudetenland on the border of Czechoslovakia and Germany over to Germany. After World War I, the US didn't learn the lesson of the dangers of isolationism. In fact, the Neutrality Act was strengthened again in 1937, and the country was more removed from global affairs than ever before. When Japan invaded China that year, Roosevelt took the opportunity to try to nudge the American public toward a more engaged worldview by proposing that aggressive nations be treated like a public health threat and be quarantined. Secretly, he instituted a program to develop long-range submarines that could blockade Japan. When Germany began invading its neighbors, Roosevelt publicly preached the neutrality that his people wanted, but provided France and England with the opportunity to purchase US-made planes in order to defend themselves against the inevitable German onslaught. Additionally, in 1939, he began a secret correspondence with the Lord Admiral of Britain, Winston Churchill, discussing ways of supporting Britain in the oncoming struggle to defend itself against Germany.
I'll be
Churchill would not become Prime Minister until May of 1940, when Neville Chamberlain resigned. Shortly thereafter, Germany instituted the Blitzkrieg lightning war, bombing civilian centers and industrial sites in England nearly every night for 8 months. London alone was bombed for 56 consecutive nights, destroying over 1 million homes and killing 40,000. The British never lost their resolve during this period. Despite standing alone against Germany, British creativity and morale kept war industries expanding in preparation for the coming years, when the European conflict would become World War II.
London pride has been handed down to us. London pride is a flower that's free. London pride means our own dear town to us, and our pride it forever will be. Dear lady, when the day is dawning, see the policeman yawning on his lonely beat. Gay lady, Mayfair in the morning, hear the footsteps echo in the empty street. Cockney feet mark the beat of history. Every street pins a memory down. Nothing ever could break or harm the charm of London town. In our city darkened now, street and square and crescent, we can feel the living past in our shadowed present. Ghosts beside the starlit Thames, who lived and loved and died, keep throughout the ages London pride. London pride has been handed down to us. London pride is a flower that's free. London pride means our own dear town to us, and our pride it forever will be. Grey city, stubbornly planted, taken so for granted for 1,000 years. Stay, city, smokily enchanted, cradle of our history and hopes and fears. Every blitz your resistance toughening from